What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Lions video. Now today I want to start a little bit of a mini series, and I don't know how long this is going to be. I don't know how many players we're going to take a look at, but I want to start taking a look deep into this Detroit Lions roster because of course it's easy to talk about the big name players, right? It's easy to talk about Jared Goff, it's easy to talk about DeAndre Swift, TJ Hockenson, Tyrell Williams, or anybody else that is kind of a bigger, more known player that is going to get playing time and put up statistics for the Detroit Lions next season. But I really want to get into the depth of this roster. I really want to get into some of the lesser known players, but players nonetheless that can end up eventually making the roster and eventually end up making an impact come Sunday. So that is what we are going to start doing today, and we are going to kick off this series talking about another undrafted free agent player in AJ Parker. Now, before we get into talking about AJ Parker, the undrafted free agent rookie cornerback from Kansas State, if you are new to the channel and you are enjoying the content, if you are enjoying looking at this Detroit Lions team, or if you enjoyed the Detroit Lions content in general, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It takes just 2 seconds out of you to do so. It's quick, it's free, and it is incredibly easy to do, and you would be helping the channel out more than you could possibly know. So if you could do that, take those 2 seconds to like and subscribe. I'd be incredibly appreciative for it. But with all of that being said, without any further ado, let's get right into talking about AJ Parker, undrafted free agent cornerback from Kansas State.
So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
Now, AJ Parker is a 5'11", 178-pound defensive back who played at Kansas State over the past 4 years, playing in 36 total games. Now, in those 36 games, AJ Parker totaled 145 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 6 interceptions, including one that he took back for a touchdown, had a pick six in his redshirt senior year, and then he also had 17 passes defended on top of that. In 2019, he was an all-12 honorable mention at the secondary position, at the cornerback position, and in 2020 won the Jim Thorpe Award of the Week one time, and actually was a Big 12 player, defensive player of the week once as well. Now in 2020, he had a really successful season, was really solid in 2020, especially with all of the problems that the Big 12 had, and of course all the problems that the pandemic caused this NCAA over the past year. Now in 2020, AJ Parker did end up only playing in 9 games for Kansas State. However, in those 9 games, did put up 40 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 1 interception, which, as I said, did go back for a touchdown, along with 4 passes defended. Now, that is a really solid season for a Big 12 cornerback, especially somebody who is a red shirt senior. However, his best year and his best season and best play as a Kansas State player was actually a year prior, and his red shirt junior season in 2019. Now in 2019, AJ Parker only ended up playing in 8 games for Kansas State and only put up 28 tackles. However, he did in those 8 games have 2.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, and 4 passes defended. He got his hands on the football far more his junior year than any other year and caused a lot more turnovers, along with having very similar pass defended statistics and having, very similar production when it comes to defending passes as the rest of his years. AJ Parker is a player that played both as a boundary cornerback as well as a nickel cornerback, so saying that he is a very versatile player would be a slight understatement. AJ Parker had a lot of positives coming out of Kansas State and was projected to be a mid-day 3 selection in the 2021 NFL Draft. Now, we all know that did not go according to plan for AJ, as he fell into undrafted free agency, but it all worked out in the the end as he signed a deal to be a member of the Detroit Lions secondary. Now, getting into AJ Parker's big-time positives, I'd say one of the biggest things about him is that he is a very quick and fluid athlete. He has very good hips. He is very smooth in transition and changes direction incredibly fluidly, which helps him make up for some of his lackings, especially when it comes to his athletic profile. Now, I will say that AJ Parker also has very good ball skills. He gets his hand on the football a lot, and of course, coming up with 6 interceptions over his 4 years at Kansas State is going to show that. Of course, with his 17 passes defended and 6 interceptions, you can tell that he has very good ball skills. He has very good burst out of his breaks and is one of the first players to get to the football every single time. If it's a 50-50 race to the football with a smaller cornerback, AJ Parker wins that more times than not. He has very quick recognition. He's a very smart player and diagnoses plays incredibly quickly. His instincts are incredibly solid. He's a really, really smart defender and is a guy that really sees patterns, recognizes different kinds of things the offense is trying to do, recognizes plays and recognizes where to be in a position to make a play, and really is a player that really thrives from being one of the smarter players on the football field. And I will also say the last thing I want to mention about AJ Parker from the positive side is that he's a really solid and very willing run defender. He does not miss a lot of tackles, wraps up really well, and as I said, as a cornerback, it's not always common that you're going to find a guy that is willing to tackle and is willing to hit somebody, but AJ Parker is one of those players that is more than willing to get his hands dirty, put his nose in the ground, and really just lay into somebody and put them on the ground, especially if a big play needs to be run, especially when a big play needs to be made in run support. AJ Parker is a cornerback that is not afraid to get his hands dirty and is not afraid to bring a player to the ground. He is a player that is willing to tackle, is good at tackling, and is a player that, of course, at the cornerback position, tackling isn't necessarily the biggest concern, but it's always nice to have a player that is willing to get his hands dirty and is more than willing to put a player on the ground when it needs to be done. Now, I will say AJ Parker is, of course, not a perfect prospect. He is not a perfect player, and his really big weaknesses come from his physical stature and come from his physical limitations. AJ Parker, as I mentioned in the beginning, is just 5'11", so he is slightly undersized to be a cornerback. We've seen cornerbacks at 5'11" be successful before, though. It's not like 5'11" is the shortest player in the NFL. It's not like 5'11" is way too small to be a solid secondary member in the NFL, but 5'11" is kind of an undersized cornerback, and in college he showed multiple times that when he's playing a bigger, more physical wide receiver who has more physical upside and is a kind of just a bigger, longer, heavier wide receiver, he does tend to struggle to play up to standards and does tend to struggle to really outjump or outmuscle some of those bigger players to the football. Another thing when it comes to his athletic limitations, he's not the greatest athlete. He's a cornerback that only ran a 4.53 40-yard dash, only at a 7.023 cone, and only was able to have a 33.5-inch vertical. Now, those aren't horrible statistics. Those aren't like, oh my God, he can't run, he can't jump, he can't move, stuff like that. It's not like it's a death sentence. It's not like it's something that he can't do, or it's not something that it's like he's the worst in the NFL. He's the slowest cornerback. He can't jump at all. It's not like that, but they're really not anything special. I'd say those numbers are even below average, especially when it comes to the vert and the 3-cone. However, as I mentioned when talking about his positives, his instincts are really solid. His instincts put him in the right place at the right time more than often. His film study and his knowledge of the game puts him in the right spot, which kind of neutralizes and kind of, I guess, makes up for the fact that he's not going to be a cornerback to run in the 4.3s. He's not going to be a cornerback that's just going to outjump everybody. He's not going to be a big-time cornerback that's going to outmuscle you to the football every single time. Now, in my personal opinion, when looking at AJ Parker, again, he was projected to be a day 3 selection. He's a guy that was a very draftable player and a guy that probably should have been drafted in the NFL draft. Definitely has the talent to do so. AJ Parker is a very solid, very good example of a high floor, low ceiling player. He is a guy that day 1 is going to come in and probably be a little bit more polished than some other UDFA corners. He's probably going to be a little bit more polished than some other young guys, but he's a guy that doesn't have the potential of other guys. It's not going to be a guy that has the potential of being an elite cornerback because he's not a guy that's going to run in the 4.3s. He's not a guy that's going to stand at 6'5". He's not a guy that's going to have a 35-inch wingspan. He's not a guy that is going to be the biggest, strongest, fastest athlete on the field, and that is going to limit his ceiling in the long run. But his film preparation, his willingness, his instincts, and of course his ball skills are all things that are going to help him be successful early. So he is the perfect example of a high floor, low ceiling player, a guy that is very draftable, a guy that probably should have been drafted in the 2021 draft, and a guy that I don't think is going to end up making the active roster right now. I don't think year one is going to end up making the active roster, but I think is a player that is absolutely going to show out in preseason, is going to show you some flashes in the preseason, and eventually is going to make his way on and off the practice squad, is going to kind of flop sometimes between the active roster and the practice squad, and is going to be a guy that is going to stick with either the Detroit Lions or another NFL team for many years to come. Well, with all of that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think about undrafted free agent AJ Parker. Let me know what you think about him, what you think of his skill set, how you think he's going to be this preseason, and how you think his future is going to stack up for the Detroit Lions. I'd be very curious to hear your guys' opinion on it. And of course, let me know what player you would like to see next on this little mini series. But with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!